truth for the battered but proud people of the Empire State. From the financial and entertainment epicenter of New York City to the sleeping and empty small cities and towns of upstate, which once bustled with manufacturing, mining, and farming. We all know from inspiration, history, and nature, we deserve a return to the success and growth of generations past, a birthright being squandered by corruption in Albany, and the depredations of an insecure, scheming mountebank posing as governor, who loathes both us and himself. As liberty beckoned to enslaved peoples behind the Iron Curtain via American broadcasts after World War II, we now say, believe, rise, and join us. Welcome to Radio Free New York.
All right. Welcome to Radio Free New York. I'm your host, Andrew Hollister. We're in the WYSL studio. And as always, I've got Bob Savage with me.
Hello, all.
And we have a special guest, District Attorney Sandra Doorley.
Good afternoon. It's great to be here.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
So, as always, if you guys are listening to the show and you want to call in with a question, you guys can call in 346-3000. Or if you're on social media, feel free to pop a question or a comment in the chat there, and we'll go through and see if we can get to everything. So, something that was interesting, I was doing a little research, and I did not realize, and I actually feel bad that I didn't know this, that you were the first female district attorney in Monroe County.
I am. I am. That was very exciting. Having, been elected first in 2011, it was pretty monumental.
Yeah, that seems like really awesome. I feel like there should have been more emphasis around that, because I feel like that's an extremely big accomplishment. It
is. And you know what? Before that, it really was an old, it's an old boys network.
Sure.
And just breaking into it was difficult at first, especially with law enforcement. But, I think after 8 years, they understand me. They all support me, and
that's awesome.
Yeah. It's been a good transition.
Yeah, very, very good. Very good. So, for people who are listening to the show, they might not know at all what the district attorney does, what you're responsible for, what the office is. You want to give us a little background on what that looks like?
Absolutely. And, it's really common whenever I go out and speak to community groups and I tell them just how large our office is and how many cases we handle. People are pretty astonished. They don't really understand how big we are. So we are the 5th largest law firm in the county, in the city of Rochester. I have 140 employees. Of that, 80 attorneys, and then myself, and even a small law enforcement office of 13 sworn investigators. Every year we handle approximately 5,000 felony investigations and 13 to 16,000 misdemeanor investigations. So it's a pretty busy office.
That sounds extremely busy.
It's very busy.
And what is a sworn investigator?
So they're retired police officers, but they're still police officers. They are our investigators. So, for example, when a charge is filed, or if we've got a homicide investigation going, we will be supplementing the work of our local law enforcement. So they go out there and they actually can make arrests. They interview people. They serve subpoenas. We have a lot of subpoenas that need to be served, but they do a lot of our investigative work.
Okay. And I have a question that may sound very naive, but I know somebody's thinking district attorney, and you mentioned 80 attorneys and yourself. Can somebody be a district attorney and not be an attorney? Is that a thing, or is that not a thing?
No, so we are all lawyers.
Okay.
So that's why I say we're the 5th largest law firm in the city of Rochester, in the county. And, I'm proud to say, if you look at the demographics of my office of the attorneys, I have slightly more women attorneys working for me than men.
That's
so,
pretty cool.
Yeah. So that's something I'm really proud of.
And I've met maybe a few people from your office, certainly not a lot of them. They all seem extremely diverse. They seem to come from various backgrounds, various ethnicities, like everything.
Exactly. And I think that's really important, because if you look at the cases that we handle, we do handle a diverse number of cases of different defendants. And we want to make sure that our office, represents the people that, we provide services to and the people that we prosecute. It would be nice to be more diverse, but, sometimes people, they don't want to become public servants.
Sure.
It takes a very special person to come in and give up high-paying jobs in the public sector to be public servants. And the people that I have in my office right now are really dedicated public servants.
Sure. And I'm sure it also goes to you guys wanting the best that you can possibly get to.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, absolutely.
Especially right now, it's a very competitive process because you've got all of the law student graduates. They've taken the bar. They're waiting for their bar results. So now is, the most important time where we can hire up and coming lawyers who really want to get their feet wet. They want to get into the courtroom. They want to get trial experience. And, being in the DA's office, you are thrown right into the mix after a couple of weeks of training. They could be doing their first jury trial, within a month of them being admitted to the bar.
Right in the deep end of the pool. So where do you Sandra Doorley, by the way, our guest here on Radio Free New York with Andrew. So where do you recruit do you recruit mostly locally, Sandra?
You know what? We, believe it or not, we do recruit in the local law firms. I mean, in the local law schools, but we get applications from all over. We get, oftentimes people want to come into Rochester. They want a city atmosphere, but they don't want a big, large city. And Rochester really, is attractive when people want to have an urban environment, yet, they want to be able to, go to parks and go hiking and not have the hustle and bustle of a big city.
Yeah, very cool. And so I think we almost touched on it, but one of the things that I think as I'm hearing this and being a small business owner, you're recruiting. It sounds like you recruit people right out of law school. Do you get people who are maybe already in a firm too, who kind of go, you know what? Yeah, I want to be a part of the district's attorney office, or do they look down on that as like, oh, it's a public service job. I'm going to take a pay cut. I'm not so interested. Like, how's that work?
We do have laterals who are interested in coming over. They may have been in private practice and they realize it's not for them. Okay. And, we do entertain, that type of attorney. As a matter of fact, I myself started off in Rochester in a big law firm at Harris Beach, and I wanted to get into the courtroom. I wanted to do something for the community. I wanted to give back. So I had been a lawyer practicing for, I think it was about almost 4 years. And, I called up Howard Rellin, who was the DA at that time. And I said, you know what? I would love to give up this private practice partnership track. I would love to be an assistant DA. And that's how it started in January of 1992.
Wow, look at that. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's pretty cool. Yeah. So is that uncommon though, or is that common? I
would say it's more, it's rare that people want to do that. Especially when the economy is good, there are more private practice opportunities for people. And frankly, they do make more money.
Okay. Yeah.
One of the good things about being in the public sector is there are loan forgiveness programs because, frankly, a lot of the young assistant DAs, they come in with a lot of student loan debt. Mm-hmm. And if they work for a certain amount of time in public service, they can have their loans forgiven. And I think that's attractive. And it's a good way to attract quality candidates.
Okay. And are those private loans, federal, local? I'm assuming there's stipulations to all
right.
that.
I think they're all federal loans.
Loans. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty interesting because often I hear about that in military service.
Right.
I've never, I think, ever heard that you would have the opportunity in the DA's office.
Exactly. So it's a very good thing. I think one of the requirements is that you have to pay your student loan interest for 10 years and be employed for 10 years, and then you could apply for loan forgiveness.
Okay. Did I understand that the candidates could apply for a job with your office even before they've got their bar results?
Well, we interview before they know whether or not they've passed the bar, but we can't hire them. It's a county policy until they're actually attorneys.
Because I know there are some programs that attorneys offer for fresh graduates that they can almost sort of practice under the supervision. That's in the private sector, though, right?
No. We can give attorneys who have graduated from law school practice orders, but they have to be under the supervision of another practicing and admitted attorney. The only thing is when we bring people in, we can't pay them for that. It's totally volunteer.
but they still get valuable
experience.
Valuable experience, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Very cool. Awesome. All right. So, guys, this is Radio Free New York. We're here with District Attorney Sandra Doorley. We're going to take a quick break here, and when we come back, we're going to talk more about the Monroe County District Attorney's Office.
Your business relies on computers and technology to operate. Slow, unreliable networks and servers can cause unplanned downtime and affect your bottom line. The experts at Simple Tech Innovations are here to help. Their preventative maintenance program ensures that your computers and network are kept up to date and monitored for any issues, keeping your business running smoothly. They also help clients achieve HIPAA, PCI, and New York State cybersecurity compliance to keep your network safe and secure. Whatever your business IT needs are, Simple Tech Innovations should be your first call. They've won the best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. Call them today for a free consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
A reminder from Abatement.
Coming back.
Bikers aim toward education. Distracted driving is dangerous, so pull over and eat. Don't try to read your mail and newspaper, and stay off your cell phone. Make a mental note to be more alert, making it a habit to expect the unexpected. Remember to look twice. Save a life. Train yourself to watch for motorcycles which are harder to see. Join Abate, and your family will be protected with a free $4,000 accident policy. Ride safe. Ride free. Ride often. Abate. If you ride, ride with us. Google Abate, Monroe County.
You're listening to Radio Free New York
On the WYSL stations.
All right. Welcome back to Radio Free New York. I'm your host, Andrew Hollister. We're here in studio with District Attorney Sandra Doorley, and we're just talking about the DA's office, kind of what the DA does, how it operates, giving you guys a little bit of understanding, because it's something that hopefully nobody interacts with in life, but if they do, it's probably important to understand how it all works, you know? So one of the things I always wonder, I was doing a little research, and you guys have like a bunch of bureaus or a bunch of departments. How does that work?
True. So we can start from a newly admitted attorney, people that would just be out of law school, and when they come in, they handle misdemeanor cases in our local courts and our city courts. So a misdemeanor is a low-level offense, punishable up to 1 year, and actually 364 days. Yeah, that was a new change in the law.
Yes, New York State, the home of the 364-day year.
Yeah, we won't go there. So these are young attorneys, and they're handling all of these misdemeanors. So a misdemeanor would be, for example, a first-time DWI offender. It would be someone who gets arrested for, a petty larceny, stealing less than $1,000. It could be a simple assault without a weapon, and it could be some of your minor sex abuse cases. These attorneys coming out of law school, handling these misdemeanors, are handling tremendous caseloads. As I said in the prior segment, we deal with approximately 13 to 16,000 misdemeanors on any given year, and we have, on a good day, if we're fully staffed, about 18 attorneys handling those cases annually. So their caseloads are pretty high. We tell them to prioritize. Obviously, we want to make sure that they serve and the community and do justice in each and every case. But, some cases where there's a victim, where there's an impact on public safety, those are cases where, they need to put more time into. Perhaps if it's just a petty larceny, someone stealing, a low amount, that's something that they can easily dispose of because the facts are right there and there isn't, a lot of victim contact. So, they're very busy attorneys. I'd like to say that they're not overworked, but unfortunately they are. So, once an attorney graduates from, misdemeanor work, then they go up to our felony bureaus. We like to start off our attorneys in a nonviolent felony bureau where they're dealing with nonviolent felonies, which would be burglary of a business, a robbery in the third degree, grand larceny cases, even some of our, paper cases, criminal possession of a forged instrument or stolen cars. So that's really where they get their feet wet, learning about going into grand jury, securing an indictment. Because in New York, in order to be prosecuted on a felony, it either has to be by an indictment handed down by a grand jury or a waiver of that process. So that's where they start to, develop their skills as felony attorneys. And then they can go on to specialized bureaus such as, our DWI or our vehicular crimes department. We have our special victims trial division, which houses our domestic violence, elder abuse, sex abuse, and child abuse crimes. There's our special investigations bureau that deals with guns and drugs. And frankly, right now, I had a meeting this morning with my bureau chiefs. The number of cases that we're receiving for illegal guns has just been skyrocketing. So we're looking perhaps to add, another attorney to that bureau. Then there's also our appeals division, and then the men and women who do, the violent felonies, which are the bulk of your violent offenders, violent offenses that really have an impact on public safety, and your homicides. So there's an overview.
That's a lot. Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
I just did the quick math here too while you were talking about the misdemeanor caseload. It just, on my calculator here, I see 722 cases each.
Sure. On any given year. So Rochester.
That's an unbelievable caseload.
So Rochester City Court, for example, when there's an intake part, and for 4 weeks, that ADA will be assigned to the intake part with that judge, and all of the cases that come in during that time will be assigned to that ADA, and then during the following months, they will be in charge of, disposing of those cases either through plea bargain, through pleas, through trials, what have you. An intake part in 4 weeks, can average up to 1,000 to 1,400 cases. And then those are the cases that attorney will handle through the following months.
So of those 13,000, how many would go to trial? Would just a guesstimate, if you can. If you don't know, I know it probably varies.
Yeah, maybe 10 to 20%.
Okay, that's still a lot.
It is a lot. I like to say plea bargaining, it's not a dirty phrase, because if you think about all of the cases that we handle, if we had to go to trial in every single felony case, in every single misdemeanor case, there's the wheels of justice would come to a complete halt, because we don't have the court staff, we don't have the judges. We would be in court trying most cases when, all of these other cases would still be coming through the door. So, plea bargaining, unfortunately, is a necessary evil.
Yeah, and something I kind of picked up on is you had mentioned your office works in the city courts too.
Right.
And people maybe don't realize that although the city courts are kind of separate from the county courts, your office does overlap and work in both.
Exactly. So your misdemeanor courts would be all of your local town and village courts and Rochester City Court. Mm-hmm. Those are the courts, the misdemeanor courts. And then once a case is either indicted by a grand jury, or if it waives indictment, that goes to a superior court, which would be a county court or a Supreme Court in the county of Monroe.
Yeah. And talking about grand jury, that phrase comes up a lot of times, and I think people don't always know what that means. That's not actually a trial, as I understand it. That's a jury deciding if there's even enough evidence to go to court.
Exactly. So the standard for a grand jury proceeding is reasonable cause to believe that a felony has been committed. So if a defendant can waive that process if everyone is in agreement, if the court the defense attorney, the prosecution, if they're in agreement that this should be the result of the case, we can waive the grand jury process, take the plea, and resolve that case that way. But other than that process, every felony must go through the grand jury. So let's say, for example, our 5,000 felonies that we handle on any given year, 20% of that felony caseload are repeat DWI offenders and those individuals who are driving without a license. We call them aggravated unlicensed operation in the first degree, or AUO first to be, for short. 20% of those cases go to grand jury. So, 20% of that of that 5,000, those cases up to 1,000 go to grand jury every year.
And so that's your office. You bring it to grand jury.
Exactly.
And then the grand jury might say, hey, we don't think this can go to court. And then are your hands tied at that point and it's done?
Correct. It's the grand jury will present evidence, and then the grand jury will decide to bill or no bill the case.
Okay.
If there's a true bill, that means that the grand jury has decided that there is reasonable cause to believe, and then a grand jury indictment will be, drafted. It'll be signed by me, and it'll also be signed by the grand jury foreman, saying that it is a true bill. This was our vote. There really is reasonable cause to believe that there's enough to go forward. And then the case kind of starts again. But if the grand jury doesn't believe it, we need to have at least 12 people for a true bill. Then the case is no billed and it's sealed. And perhaps if there wasn't even an arrest of the defendant, then that procedure, no one knows about it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And say it all goes through grand jury. Is the very next step trial? Is that how that goes?
So then the whole process kind of starts all over again. The defendant would then be brought before a county or Supreme Court, and they would have another arraignment where they would plead guilty or not guilty on the indictment. Then if there are hearings to determine whether or not the evidence is legally sufficient, if, say, for example, a statement was taken lawfully, or if there was a violation, of a defendant's rights, a hearing would be had to determine the legality of that statement. For an ID procedure, the same thing. And then you would eventually get to trial.
Okay. And any way throughout this process, if all of a sudden you guys think, oh, maybe we shouldn't prosecute this, you can withdraw. Is that correct?
Absolutely. We can dismiss the charges, or, in that case, we also plea bargain on indictments as well.
The way,
yeah.
Okay.
But a long and tortured road to get to trial, a full trial, like in maybe a high-profile felony case.
It is. Usually, a felony case must be tried within 6 months. That's the standard under our speedy trial laws, and it's also under the Excellence Initiative of the Court of Appeals, Justice Janet DeFiore, that cases should be tried within 6 months. But, sometimes we're not able to do that. Say, for example, we're waiting on DNA results, or if there's a psychiatric issue that has entered into the case where, doctors need to examine the defendant, then that kind of, pushes it out past 6 months.
Yeah, that makes sense. And 6 months is saying when the trial starts or when it should be completed?
It's got to be started within 6 months. Okay. We have to say, we're ready for trial. But, starting in January with the new criminal justice reforms, we actually have to certify our readiness for trial, and we can't do that until now that we've given overall discovery within 15 days of arraignment. So that's going to be a big difference come January.
Okay. And how do you expect that to impact cases? Is that going to make things way harder on your office, increase overhead, or is it not a big deal?
Andrew, we have to go to break here in a minute. This is going to be a fertile field of discussion coming up in the next segment, criminal justice reform, and what stressors that's going to place on the district attorney's office and on criminal procedures. That's safe to say, Sandra?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Major considerations going on, and also major considerations for public safety.
Yeah. So. Sure. Yeah. No. Absolutely. I know personally. I've read through some of it, and I don't understand all of it. So hopefully we'll be able to go through that. So we've talked about a whole bunch of stuff. It sounds like you're responsible for a tremendous amount, and it's maybe a complicated organization to run. Is that a fair statement?
Like I say, very briefly, I have 3 hats. I'm the chief trial attorney. I'm the chief law enforcement officer of Monroe County. And you know what? I'm a CEO of a 140-person corporation company with a almost $16 million budget of your tax dollars.
Yeah, that sounds pretty important. Yeah. That is Sandra Doorley, District Attorney of Monroe County. We're here on Radio Free New York. We'll be back in a moment.
You're listening to the voice of
3 minutes.
AM 1040 Avon, Rochester, FM 92.1 Rochester, FM 95.5 Spencerport, and WYSL1040.com everywhere.
Why do businesses choose to move their website from Wix and Squarespace to Simple Tech Innovations? Maybe it's their excellent customer service or attention to detail. Maybe it's their ability to give a truly customized solution. Or perhaps they just like the fact that Simple Tech is a local small business that builds great relationships with its clients. Whatever the reason may be, you can rest assured knowing that the local team at Simple Tech has your best interest in mind when building or updating your website. They're hands-on and love helping customers achieve their goals. But don't take my word for it. They've won the best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. If your website doesn't match your dreams or isn't achieving your goals, give the professionals at Simple Tech Innovations a call today for a consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
Aircraft Environmental Systems proudly supports Radio Free New York. Rochester-based leaders in climate simulation chambers for America's R&D laboratories. We're experts in troubleshooting, calibrations, custom designs, and consulting for more than 40 years. Industry pioneers, we created the first ever fleet of temperature, humidity, and altitude test chambers available to rent coast to coast. Trained and trusted by environmental chamber manufacturers, we are ACES. Find us at acesinc.com.
Your business relies on computers and technology to operate. Slow, unreliable networks and servers can cause unplanned downtime and affect your bottom line. The experts at Simple Tech Innovations are here to help. Their preventative maintenance program ensures that your computers and network are kept up to date and monitored,
Coming back,
keeping your business running smoothly. They also help clients achieve HIPAA, PCI, and New York State cybersecurity compliance to keep your network safe and secure. Whatever your business IT needs are, Simple Tech Innovations should be your first call. They've won the best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. Call them today for a free consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
Radio Free New York on WYSL. AM 1040, FM 92.1, and FM 95.5 West.
All right, we are back here on Radio Free New York. I'm your host, Andrew Hollister, and we have District Attorney Sandra Doorley with us in studio. Thanks for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
So right before the break, we started breaking into criminal justice reform, which seems like a pretty hot topic right now. I bet you the listeners are really interested in hearing about it from your perspective, how you think it's going to impact maybe the way things happen in your office and also maybe their wallets in terms of tax money long term.
Exactly. But as it stands now, there are no tax dollars that came along with this criminal justice reform. So, as it stands in terms of what my office now has to do for discovery, which means giving over all of our information, which we do as it is. We do it now, but we usually do it within, 45 days. That's our open discovery policy. Now we have to do it within 15 days. So, the men and women in my office who really have heavy caseloads, now they're going to be, doing a lot more work in a shorter time period.
On steroids.
Yeah. I mean, it would be nice if I had the funding to bring in paralegals to help us. That way we can make sure that we get everything out in a timely fashion. So that's one problem that I see. One of the a big impact is going to be for victims. So, we talked a little bit about a grand jury proceeding, and a grand jury under the law, as it's always been, is a secret proceeding. So when witnesses come in and testify before a grand jury, there is a record made of their testimony, and that is something that we give over before trial. It could be a witness who's, given a supporting deposition to the police, or their testimony, or what evidence they would provide may also be contained in a police report, but having their testimony, is something different, solely apart from police reports. That information that we give over before trial now must be given over in 15 days. So I'm going to need more grand jury court reporters who actually take down the testimony to actually be able to provide that within that timely fashion.
How are you going to do this?
I've gone to the county at my budget hearing, and I've asked for, additional funds. So I'm hoping that, I'll be granted those additional funds. If not, we're going to have to make do with what we have. But
you're not superhuman. I mean,
right.
You can only do what you can do, right?
Exactly. But when you're dealing with, making sure that cases continue in the court system, when you have victims, when you have public safety concerns, we're going to have to do it regardless. So I'm hoping that I am able to fill a few more spots with paralegals, grand jury stenographers, and a victim advocate, because there's three separate components of criminal justice reform. There's the bail reform, there's the discovery reform, which is solely on the district attorneys to be able to turn over all of this information, and the speedy trial, the time within which we must be ready for trial.
Just real quick, let me just throw in here. For folks who don't know, a little jargon alert here. Discovery is the process before trial where there is the gathering of evidence, right, and the taking of depositions or examinations before trial. This is all time-consuming stuff.
Right.
And resource-consuming stuff.
Right. So, I mean, it goes back to, police officers. They've got to document everything that they do. We've got to get all of their reports done in 15 days.
Yeah, the folks out there have seen the movies and the TV shows where, the trial is proceeding and somebody bursts through the doors into the courtroom and says, aha, and there's the suddenly dispositive a piece of evidence, or the secret witness who just completely resolves the case. That doesn't happen.
No,
that can't happen.
No, that doesn't happen. That can't happen. And it's certainly not going to happen going forward. So, think about all of the other agencies. We've got, our police agencies who are now going to have to make sure that we have all this information within 15 days. Think of, our crime labs, if they're doing, ballistics checks on weapons, illegal weapons, if they're doing DNA testing, if they're doing trace, that technically has to be turned over within 15 days. Toxicology, when someone is stopped for a DWI and maybe driving impaired by drugs, all of that, information goes to the medical examiner's toxicology lab. We need to get those results within 15 days and hand it over to the defense. So it's going to be time consuming. But getting back to, the grand jury, there's going to be less people in jail awaiting trial. And here we are giving over this grand jury testimony very early on. So, my concern, and I know that many other DAs, in this state feel the same, we're afraid that there's going to be more witness intimidation and witness tampering. Defendants will know who said what and who has what evidence against them. And with less defendants being held pre-trial, especially, on a lot of cases, which we can talk about, which I think your listeners will be shocked. I just fear that we're going to have, much more witness tampering and intimidation.
Sure, because you got these defendants now, they're all out. They're out walking around in the community where they will have access to their accusers. And now those who would be released are basically, there's a very short list of perpetrators who would still be subject to being held, felony cases, right?
True. So they broke it down into qualifying and non-qualifying offenses. So if you're a non-qualifying offense, there is a presumption that you will be released on your own recognizance. If the judge finds that perhaps you haven't had the best history in returning to court, the judge can impose the least restrictive non-monetary means, but in no way can hold you on a bail. So a non-qualifying offense are all of your misdemeanors except for 5. There are 5 misdemeanors where bail, as we know it today, can be set. That would be criminal contempt. That means violating an order of protection. Forcible touching, sexual misconduct, sex abuse second, and sex abuse third. So those victims will still have the protection if the court feels it necessary to have the perpetrator have bail set on them. In terms of nonviolent felonies, mostly all of them are non-qualifying offenses, so there will be the presumption of release on your own recognizance. Some of the non-qualifying offenses are drug offenses. Even, our criminal sale or criminal possession of controlled substance in the 3rd degree, which are Class B nonviolent felonies, those are your drug dealers. Those are individuals who are going to come in and they're going to be released by a judge because the law requires that they cannot be held. We're afraid, even for low-level drug offenders, some of them that we have been diverting to our opioid stabilization court, our drug court, they're not even going to come before a court. They're going to be given an appearance ticket. And I just hope that we don't lose more lives, because sometimes we're able to capture them right away and not hold them in jail, but get them to, a bed or get them to an outpatient facility right away. And we kind of, use the criminal justice system as a handoff. Now they're not even going to make it into court. They're going to be given an appearance ticket, which could be anywhere from 72 hours to 20 days. So I just fear that, this may cause, more deaths. Yeah.
And something that I know maybe a little bit about what you've done is actually those diversion programs. And I think that sometimes people don't get a chance to hear about how, at least what it sounds like to me, how good that's working for your office to be able to do that for more than just drugs even, and one of the things I like about diversion programs when done properly, there's a caveat there, when done properly, is it's really expensive to have people in jail. It's really straining on our system.
Absolutely.
So when your office has the opportunity to do that, it sounds like you do. Do you want to talk about what some of those are?
Exactly, because we've got numerous diversion programs from, our drug courts. We've got opioid stabilization part. We've got our judicial diversion part, which means some charges by statute would go to a drug treatment if the perpetrator has a drug problem, and our traditional drug court. We have our mental health court, which would allow people with, mental health issues, instead of going to jail, to go to this court where they're overseen by members of the mental health profession so that they can get the treatment they need. There's even one particular program that the DA's office, myself, was instrumental in creating, which started in June, for low-level offenders who meet the criteria. If they're arrested and they are suffering from mental illness, we're going to divert them right to St. Mary's. We're not even going to bring them in the court system because they need the treatment. They shouldn't be warehoused waiting, for their criminal case. If they comply and meaningfully engage, that's our term. It's a term of art. We leave it to the doctors to determine meaningful engagement. If they meaningfully engage, those charges will never see the inside of a courtroom, which is important. It's also important to do that with drug cases that we do for Project Hope. So, we see that that's making a difference. Even with
Veterans Court too. Did you mention that?
There's so many. There's Veterans Court, which, people who have, served our country and served our country honorably, and who may come back with PTSD, and they may see and find themselves inside of a courtroom. We want to make sure that we give them the benefit and thank them for their service and divert them to our Veterans Court. We have a human trafficking court, which, I think it's in a couple of weeks, we're going to have a press conference to show that we're expanding it to help those who find themselves in a situation where, they're being, used for the benefit of others, and we're going to give them an upper hand to help them get out of their situation. And we also have our gun crimes part where, we're seeing 3 tracks. People who are just charged with illegal firearms, they would either, now they're going to go before one judge so that procedurally all of their cases are handled similarly under procedural justice standards, and they all go before Justice Moran, a little bit of overflow to Justice Schiano. And so 3 tracks, people who are, the worst of the worst offenders who are causing havoc in our community, who are dangerous public safety threats, they're going to be fast-tracked to state prison. Those who don't have a record and maybe are only holding their, a gun for personal safety, we're going to give them an opportunity through interim probation to earn the opportunity not to go to a state prison. And then we have a 3rd program called Swift, Certain, and Fair, which again, it's a small group of offenders who would ordinarily be sent to state prison, but they're given an opportunity to, get job skills, to get treatment, to work one-on-one with a probation officer to try to change their lives around. We have a 63% success rate in that program.
What are some of the offenses that would lead to that court?
Only a weapon charge, not one that's used in an assault or in a crime. It's just
illegal weapons possession.
Just straight criminal possession of a weapon. So again, they're not charges that, where there's a robbery, where there's, a victim. It's, just your plain possession of a legal firearm.
All right. That is District Attorney Sandra Doorley here on Radio Free New York. We're going to take a brief break, and we'll be back in a moment.
Your business relies on computers and technology to operate. Slow, unreliable networks and servers can cause unplanned downtime and affect your bottom line. The experts at Simple Tech Innovations are here to help. Their preventative maintenance program ensures that your computers and network are kept up to date and monitored for any issues, keeping your business running smoothly. They also help clients achieve HIPAA, PCI, and New York State cybersecurity compliance to keep your network safe and secure. Whatever your business IT needs are, Simple Tech Innovations should be your first call. They've won the best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. Call them today for a free consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
Fiorella, a family-owned farm-to-table Italian restaurant with casual atmosphere at the newly renovated Rochester Public Market. Fiorella offers wood-fired, old-world-style pizza with naturally leavened dough, house-made fresh pasta, desserts, and gelato. Enjoy craft beers, imported Italian and New York State wines. Open Wednesday through Saturday for lunch and dinner. Wednesday evenings enjoy no corkage fee. And Thursday is gnocchi night. Call 434-5705 for reservations. View the menu on the web. restaurantfiorella.com.
Why do businesses choose to move their website from Wix and Squarespace to Simple Tech Innovations? Maybe it's their excellent customer service or attention to detail. Maybe it's their ability to give a truly customized solution. Or perhaps they just like the fact that Simple Tech is a local small business that builds great relationships with its clients.
Coming back.
You can rest assured knowing that the local team at Simple Tech has your best interest in mind when building or updating your website. They're hands-on and love helping customers achieve their goals. But don't take my word for it. They've won the best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. If your website doesn't match your dreams or isn't achieving your goals, give the professionals at Simple Tech Innovations a call today for a consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
You're listening to Radio Free New York on the WYSL stations.
All right, welcome back to Radio Free New York. I'm your host, Andrew Hollister. We have District Attorney Sandra Doorley with us. And I'm scrolling through some of the comments here on our Facebook live feed. I wanted to give you a chance to maybe respond to a couple of them. First one is from Lorraine on Facebook. She says, Soros money coming in from the left. So do you want to talk about that? I know there's been some media.
Yeah. Lorraine, you're subtle, I've got to say.
Lorraine, thank you for asking that question. Yes. So far, there has been over $800,000 of negative ads, purchased against me by the New York Justice and Public Safety PAC. And if you even look on the FCC or the New York State Board of Elections disclosure report, there's only one donor to that PAC responsible for those ads, and it is George Soros. So, my question is, what does George Soros want with a district attorney's race in Monroe County? I mean, it's
part of a national thing.
Exactly.
He's going after DA positions everywhere.
Right. And I know one of his other big races this year was the Queens district attorney race, where I believe it was Tiffany Caban versus Melinda Katz, and I believe his candidate lost the primary, Tiffany Caban. But that's a lot of money. We have never seen this large of an outside source coming in to affect a local election before.
Yeah.
So, Arna, I'm lucky.
Yeah. And, to me, that's interesting because, for those of you who have listened to the show for a while and maybe who have kind of followed me over the years, I still say I'm kind of new to politics because I didn't get involved till 2013. And some people are like, hey, that's like a long time. And I'm like, not when I start every day I learn something new, right? And when I first got involved, I kept hearing the name George Soros, like constantly. And I thought it was kind of like just a made up boogeyman until like more and more recently, I'm seeing like, that's not the case at all. Like, why is all of this outside money coming into a local county election?
Right. And it looks like his platform and it looks like the candidates that he supported are anti-law enforcement. And, I'm clearly supported by law enforcement. I have been so, my entire career for 28 years. And it looks like, some of his DAs that he's gotten elected have, shown disrespect to law enforcement. For example, Larry Krasner in Philadelphia, he was funded by George Soros. I think it was over maybe $1.5 million that was put into his campaign, and he was elected. And look at what's going on in Philadelphia. The U.S. attorney has actually come in and taken over the prosecution because Larry Krasner refuses to.
And what's just a ballpark figure? I haven't looked at recent filings for DA races, but what's a common amount spent in a local DA race, like in a whole election year? That seems like a lot of money.
I mean, anywhere from 100 to 250,000. That would be.
This is for an incumbent.
No, I'm trying to think. When I ran the first time, it was an open seat. When I ran against Bill Taylor, who's now one of my very good friends, I think I may have spent over $200,000, and I think he was spent double what I did. The last time I ran, I didn't have a serious opponent, and I think I still spent $100. And so far I've raised close to $120,000, $130,000, which is pretty good in this day and age.
Yeah. So this.
I was going to ask, how do you fight $800,000 being dumped on you?
You don't. But my reputation and the good work that the DA's office has done, I think, speaks for itself. So yesterday I had a press conference, and I had a lot of my supporters there, and I can't compete with. It's going to be close to $1 million, but. My opponent can't compete with my record. I've got, 28 years, 8 years as your DA. We've done great things in this community. We're, actively participating in diversion programs, yet, we're sending the worst of the worst offenders to prison. We're protecting your public safety. If you're victims, we're supporting you. We're doing our job. We're doing our job day in and day out. And, I dare anyone question the integrity and the ethics of anyone that I work with, including myself.
Yeah, yeah. Now, there's another comment in here that I disagree with this person's comment, but if they pick this up, I want to make sure nobody else who's listening to the show maybe thinks this too. Darren says that he feels like your beliefs on bail are anti-rights. And I didn't pick that up. I wanted to give you a chance to address that because we've talked about this offline, and I don't think that that's the case at all.
Exactly. So. You know what? I agree that there should be bail reform, but I think there needs to be a public safety component in bail reform. Nobody wants to see anyone sitting in prison because they can't afford bail. But you've got to look at public safety concerns, effects on victims, and frankly, whether or not the person will come back to court. Under the law now, say someone has multiple felony convictions and they have that drug case, and they may not be from the area, that person is going to be released. So where's the justice there?
Yeah, and in speaking with many judges in the area, that seems to be their main concern as well. They're not talking about bail on a punitive measure.
Right.
They're talking about, hey, I just want to make sure that this person actually shows up to court so that we can find out, are they guilty or not?
Exactly. Most, judges are the ones that set bail, and now the criteria that they are going to have to use in order to come up with, what is fair in each case, that's changed. And again, they're not allowed to consider public safety and the effect of, on the community.
Yeah. And so that's probably a fair thing to bring up too. You don't get to set bail.
No.
That's not even your option.
No,
yeah.
I don't wear that hat.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a court thing.
Yeah. But you do have the, I don't know if the right term is power or authority, or it's your job to say, hey, we think this should or shouldn't be prosecuted, which ultimately grand jury
Correct.
has a say in that. It's also within your authority to say, hey, we think that this person doesn't belong in jail. We think a little bit of maybe therapy or rehab or something like that keeps them out of jail, keeps the justice system from being strained.
Exactly.
And that's what you're doing, it sounds like.
I give this example, the Monroe County jail system downtown and over by Monroe Community College, the capacity is 1,600. We have been historically housing inmates anywhere from the 12 to 1,300 number. Recently, we have been at 1,000 and have dipped into 900. And why the decrease? Because we're making smarter choices as to who is being housed pretrial and who is being released and who is being sent to diversion courts. But so if you say we've got about 950 to 1,000 in the jail right now, come January 1st, about 300 will be walked out.
Wow, so another 30% reduction.
Right,
yeah.
Right. So now they've closed the facility over by Monroe Community College, and
That's brand new, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, New York does that a lot. That's
I read a report. I think it was Shenango
radio show.
Shenango County. The DA down there said that his jail's basically going to be empty.
Yeah.
Which, in one perspective, you hope that's how society runs, but we have to be realistic that not everybody is out there committing. I talk a lot on the show about nonviolent crimes, but there are people that do commit violent crimes that don't belong with society, and there should be a way to protect people from violent people.
Exactly. I mean, one of the big things, I didn't get into all of the qualifying offenses where you can still, set bail, but a home burglary, that's a non-qualifying offense. So if someone breaks into your home without a weapon and they want to steal your property, and you could be home with your family, that person will be released on their own recognizance.
No.
Yeah, just think about the implications of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You encounter that person in public.
Sure. Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And with them having access to the witness statement in advance now could potentially, there's no guarantee that it's putting somebody in danger, but it sounds like it could.
Exactly.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us here on Radio Free New York. This is Andrew Hollister in studio with District Attorney Sandra Doorley. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
I will catch you guys next week.
It's cooler than